Somewhere between the edge of being alive and feeling dead.
Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about the Durston X-Mid-2 trekking pole tent. This is not the Pro, this is just the standard model. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss how this tent works a little bit. We've got some other videos on the channel when I first got this, but now I have experience summer, winter, many trips, and we're going to talk about how I use this tent from spring till fall, and then I guess late fall into the winter. I use it differently and different equipment with it. So let's talk about that. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to get this Tyvek sheet. I always carry this in my backpack, and this is my I guess ground sheet, my base ground sheet. So let's set that up. This just cuts down on condensation and cold. It's more or less the perfect size. Thank you, Trekking with Taz, who sourced this extra material online. We got it for free, and I guess it's a little bit windy, so I'll get some pieces of wood to just hold it down. All right. So let's talk about the materials. So this is the tent. Comes with this inside of this bag. And this is a 2-layer tent. It's got an outer fly, which is sort of the sacrificial layer, taking the rain off. And then it's got the inner, which is the mesh. And this is not the solid version, it's just the regular X-Mid-2 by one of the drawstrings. All right, so I have this all bundled together. What I have in here is the outer fly, the inner mesh, and then I have a ground sheet, I believe, as well. Yeah, I know it's extra, but I got the ground sheet before I got this, and I use them both to just extra protection so that the tent will last a lot longer. All right, let's unroll that tent. What I like about this tent is it's really easy to tear down and set up. You can do it pretty quickly once you know how it works, and I guess it's similar with many tents, but this one really does work well for my use cases. You know what? Let's do this the right way, because then I can talk through how I do this in the winter. So first, what I'm going to do, this is the inner layer, the inner mesh with the ground sheet. I'll set that aside over there. I'm going to set up the outer fly first. Let's just pretend it's raining outside, and we don't want that inner to get wet. So let's talk about stakes. In the summertime, I use the MSR groundhog stakes, and I do not use the groundhog minis because these are longer, you get more surface area, and this tent really needs good stakes, so don't get the minis. If you're going to get these kind of stakes for the summer, get the longer ones, regular MSR groundhogs. So I've got a bunch of them in here, 4 for the corners. Let's start off with that. Let's grab 4. All right, so one thing to notice is, let's come in here and take a look at this. So we can see here, this is the regular sort of drawstring, and I have this addition for wintertime because you need more distance to stake out in the snow for wintertime, because in wintertime we're not using the groundhogs, we're using these larger snow stakes. We'll take a look at those in just a minute. Okay. Now what we're going to do is get the trekking poles, and actually you can use trekking poles for this, but I've chosen the Zflicks poles. Use these in all seasons and I love them. They're super small, much smaller than trekking poles, made out of carbon fiber, super light, pretty strong, and that could poke in quite a bit deeply into snow and mud and sand. So what I do is I use a snow basket for my snowshoes, pop it in there, and this is a mud basket. You can use a snow basket in wintertime. So far this has worked quite well. And we will pop it in there. Let's do this on the other side. And now we'll get the second one. And just to point out these Zflicks poles, one side has this little knob on it, and the other side does not. That little knob fits into a little grommet at the top and the peak there. Once again, using the mud basket. Always bring these now. All right, so nice tight peak there. The snow is going to run off quite nicely, and of course we can add other guy lines. But stake out a bit more, at least the vestibules. I like to do 6 minimum for me. I know technically you can get away with 4, and I have done that before. But now what we're going to do is roll up the door. So this is your door here, and for the sake of this video, we don't really care about, this isn't really a tent setup video, it's just a discussion of tent that I use and how I use it in winter versus the rest of the year. So we have our guy lines. Always leave a few connected on the ridge lines. Those 2 ridge lines, I pull them out, stake those out if it's windy, plus a few other points. Let's talk about this now. Use both cameras, why not? All right, so we've got it all staked out. Got our doors up. We have our, I guess our base layer ground sheet, Tyvek sheet. Let's take a look inside. So, see how this is set up in here? Now, I can hook up the inner. I can clip it in the corners. It's a mesh inner, but what does it do for me in the wintertime? It adds weight. It's just another item that I can touch the edges with and get condensation and wetness on my sleeping, my sleep system, the sleeping bag, the pillow, all that kind of thing. Just another way to get more wet is the bottom line. So I choose to just set it up this way in the wintertime. You can see I kind of have more room because if there's no inner, I have all this room in here where maybe the inner would be blocking because there's a gap between the inner and the fly, but now I have all this room in here. So I can put stuff around, you know, if I put a bag over there and it touches the edge, not a big deal. If I want to keep something dry, I just keep it away from the edge and I'm good to go. And if I really need it to be warm and dry, I bring it inside my sleeping bag with me. Try not to bring wet stuff in the sleeping bag because it'll just condensate that wetness into the sleeping bag. If it's something critical, then maybe you'll have to try to dry it off a bit, like your socks if you don't have other socks, etc. Anyway, let's just take a look at this, how this is all set up in here. All right, so I've got my 2 doors, and for winter time, all I have to do is close these doors. Let's zip it up. Zip up that side. Just put this down here for a second. Try to keep it from tipping over. All right, I'm not going to zip it down all the way, but, you know, look from that angle at the room that I have in here, right? Looking over here from that angle, I have a whole lot of room in here, don't I? And for wintertime, that's great because I can lie down, set up my sleep system, stay nice and warm. And because I'm 6'2", I kind of go diagonally like this because I'm tall. And as you can see, my head has plenty of room there. Turn this around, you can see my feet. And this is what I do for wintertime right here. This fly keeps the snow, if maybe there's some wet rain, freezing rain, whatever, keeps it off. And I have my sleep system here. And let's talk about that a bit. So now, you might look around and say, hey, those edges over there, they're going to let cold air in. Well, no, they're not going to. Learn this from Kane Does Outdoors. That's his YouTube channel. Many others do this as well. You just get snow around you, and you just put snow on the edges. Like I'll show you some clips from some winter trips I've done. Put snow all around and it seals that bottom. Now, the only way you're going to have really airflow is up in the corners there, right? Where you have these airflow pockets. And so you control the airflow now, but around the edges, you stop the wind from blowing in, the super cold air at nighttime from blowing in, and you still have some airflow going up top there. And if you want to leave some of the edge open, you don't have to seal all of it. To create some airflow, you have total control. So I like that because now my sleep system is highly unlikely that it will get wet unless it's just super wet in a morning fog and you're camped right beside a creek and, you know, whatever, then that's different. And there's nothing you can do about that. But this is my winter setup. And the only difference between winter and summer is, well, fall to or early spring to late fall is during those 3 seasons, I have my inner clipped in here so that bugs stay out. That's really what the inner does for me. Keeps bugs out, and I don't have to worry about bugs in the fall. So why would I bring the inner in the fall? To me, there's no reason for it. It's just extra weight. It's just something else that can touch the fly and condensate. It's just another thing I have to put in my pack, which takes up space. Much needed space, especially for winter, and it gets snow collected on it or frost or condensation, and it's just another thing to take care of. So my fly, if it gets wet or snowy or anything like that, I can bundle that up separately and not get everything else wet, right? Even if I decide to put it in my pack. This is so small, I can throw it in a small garbage bag or even a grocery bag, put that separate and just like set it up again. And even if it is wet, it actually doesn't matter too much because nothing's going to be touching it. It's the outer sacrificial layer. So I really like that I have control over my winter experience. Remember, what is the inner for any tent? It's there to keep the bugs out. Some people like that, a solid inner material for more warmth. To me, it's just another thing that can create problems for you in the winter. That's just my opinion. Your warmth, really, if you're relying on your tent for your warmth, I think you have the wrong strategy, to be honest. I think it should be your sleep system. And for me, maybe I cheat a bit. I do have an e-bivvy. And so I have a video where I have the Polar Ranger sleeping bag. And I put that inside the e-bivvy if it's really cold. And that's just another protection layer to keep condensation from affecting my sleep system. So it's kind of like almost like having another solid inner layer, but it's just customized to my sleep system. And it still gives me all the space in here, and there's much less chance it's going to touch anything. My sleeping bag is in that, and it's really worked well. So looking at this, we will set this up. We'll just show the difference. What I'm going to do is, this is the ground sheet from Durston gear. And like I said, I have a Tyvek sheet there. I don't use this in the winter, just that. I'm not going to set it up today, because we're going to set up the inner and just see what that looks like in here. Pretty easy. We just clip the four corners in here. All right, so it's attached to the bottom. Now we have, all right, we've got the inner hooked up on the bottom here, as you can see, four corners. And now there's these two clips that just clip into these top sections here. I'm trying to do it with one hand, see if I can do that. Hold the camera in one, clip in the other. Okay, there's one. Let's do the other side. Let's clip this next one. Make sure you line them up. And right here in the clip, one-handed. All right, so now we have all right, get it showing. Right, there it is. Here we go. And we have the inner. Let's go inside and take a closer look. And you can see what I mean by less space, right? So, especially in the vestibules, you have to unzip things to get access to that space in the winter. What is the purpose of this in the winter? It serves no purpose. It's just another hassle. And, right? So, I take the inner out. For wintertime, yeah, you lose these pockets, fair enough, but I gain a ton of room, and I can just get my sitting pad and put it there and put things on the sitting pad, etc., etc. So I'm more than happy to get rid of the inner, less weight, more inner space that's quickly accessible, and I can just cook my meal right over there. I don't have to unzip anything, can roll over, grab my stuff really easy. I mean, it's tons of room in here anyways. But there's even more room in the winter, so that's my setup. Well, I've shown how the fly works on its own in the wintertime. The sort of philosophy as to why you don't need the inner for the wintertime. What does the inner do for you? It's there to keep the bugs out. That's what that mesh is for. If you have the solid, you've got more solid material going up here. Higher chance of condensation. You know, it's easy to touch these sides, easier, and especially on that solid material because it's not breathing. I get rid of the inner, even though it's all mesh, mostly mesh. One more thing to talk about. In the wintertime, of course, I'm not using those stakes. I'm using winter stakes. So as you can see here, much bigger. Let's compare. So this is a full-size MSR groundhog, and this is a winter stake. This is for snow stakes, they call them. You can use that in sand, soft soil, I guess, if you have to go really deep, but basically winter. And what I do is, all right, so just to talk to this, so in the winter, we now have these extensions, which they're always connected to the tent all year in case I need them. And what I will do is, you know, I can slide in here, or I can slip knot it through any of these holes, whatever, and I will bury this sideways in the deep snow and pack down that snow, and it'll freeze and hold it nice and solid. Now, I always bring my avalanche kit, so I have a shovel that can dig holes, easily put this in. I can dig it out, because when it freezes, it can freeze solid. But essentially, this is how you do it for wintertime. You need bigger stakes because the snow has a lot of give to it, but these work quite well. We've tested them, and I think many backpackers who do winter camping use these. All right, so we've covered the different stakes for different times of year. MSRs, full length, spring to late fall. Snow stakes for wintertime. Got those from Amazon. MSR sells, same kind of thing. You want strong ones, not cheap aluminum ones that'll just bend. But again, I'm not really pounding them in the ground. I'm digging in snow and putting them in the snow and whatnot. I always have lots of extra guyline. You never know when you're going to need this. You have a really windy day, you cut a section. Now I have lots of guyline attached at strategic points here on the tent. When I need them, I add more stakes. Also on the sides here, I have little pull-out points. But all around I can hook up to the, if I need these, I haven't needed them yet. Always good to have extra guyline if you need to do tweaks to your system to keep yourself nice and warm and comfy. Anyways, hope that kind of shows you the principles. Some of these things are really not specific to the trekking pole tent. You know, this idea of not having an inner, as long as your tent has a separate fly, if you're able to set up that fly separately from everything else, and you might say, well, only trekking pole tents do that, right? No. Look at the X-Dome 1. Yeah, I know it's from Dan Durston, but his new X-Dome series, you're able to set up the fly with the poles by themselves. Perfect for winter. I don't want an inner for the winter time. I don't want it. I just want the fly, and I'll have more space and less chance of touching the edges and having a condensation problem. So you get to make the choice. But anyway, that's my philosophy. It's worked really well. You can ask Gerald on Trekking with Taz as well. Both of us have gone through some pretty serious winter weather with that. And really, your warmth comes mostly from your sleep system. All the components to that sleep system. And maybe some clothes, whatever. I really don't think the tent, you should be relying on it for much. It'll knock down the wind. That's really what it's for. Keep the snow off of you. Keep the wind off of you. And this is going to do a great job doing that. Yes, if it's super windy out, having an inner, which is made out of solid material, halfway up, that's going to cut the wind as well. But if you're in really windy stuff like that, try to pick a better spot. If you have no choice, then what I will do is I'll use my e-bivvy. My e-bivvy is another break to block that wind, and I'll put my sleeping bag in the e-bivvy, and that's another solid layer. So to me, there's much more customizability doing it that way. I am just going to bring the fly, and I love the Zflicks poles, and I still hike with trekking poles. So you could say, well, you're just hiking with extra weight. Those are so light and they're strong. And what I really think about is if I break a trekking pole, now it's going to be hard to set up my tent. I have to go find a stick and customize the size, make sure it's right. The Zflicks poles work great. Anyways, hope you guys got something out of this video. If you do, click that like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you like what you're hearing, and leave a comment if you have something to share. Thank you.